The house was still, enveloped in a heavy silence that seemed to press against every wall. She sat in her favorite chair, staring at the dimly lit room, feeling the weight of emptiness settle over her. The familiar creaks of the floorboards, once unnoticed, now echoed loudly in the quiet. Every shadow seemed longer, every corner darker, and every sound reminded her that she was alone. Her hands rested on her lap, trembling slightly. She wanted to speak, to call someone, but the silence of the night swallowed her words before they could even form. Memories of laughter, conversation, and shared moments filled her mind, making the stillness even more oppressive. The absence of companionship felt vast and suffocating. She tried to focus on small tasks, but even folding a blanket or pouring a cup of tea felt heavy, burdensome, and almost meaningless in the solitude of the night. And yet, beneath the quiet despair, a faint flicker of longing persisted, a yearning for connection, for someone to notice, for a presence she could feel. She picked up the phone and turned it over in her hands, hoping against hope for a ring, a message, a sign that someone remembered her. But the screen remained blank, lifeless. Days passed the same way, each one filled with anticipation and disappointment. The absence of communication became a reminder of how distant the world had grown from her. Even the familiar contacts she once relied upon seemed to fade away. Friends were busy, family distracted, and the silence was deafening. Her chest tightened as the longing for a simple voice grew stronger. She missed greetings, laughter, casual chatter, small affirmations of being seen and valued. She whispered her thoughts into the quiet room, as if speaking them aloud could somehow summon attention, but the phone remained silent, the messages absent, the world seemingly moving on without her. And in that emptiness, a sense of invisibility settled over her, pressing down on her heart like a shadow she could not shake. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to drift back to days filled with laughter, conversation, and closeness. Family gatherings, shared meals, and the comfort of familiar voices filled her mind. Each memory carried warmth, yet it was tinged with sadness, a reminder of what had been lost and how distant those connections now felt. She remembered holding hands, exchanging smiles, and feeling seen in a way that gave her purpose and joy. Each recollection was a small balm, yet it also made the present solitude sharper. Her heart ached with longing for those days, for the reassurance that she was known and cherished. The contrast between past warmth and current emptiness pressed heavily on her. Even the smallest moments of togetherness, a shared joke, a gentle touch, a voice calling her name, echoed in her mind, amplifying her sense of isolation in the present. Yet in the midst of longing, she clung to these memories, allowing them to remind her that love had existed and could exist again, even if she could not see it yet. The streets outside continued on their familiar rhythms, yet she felt removed from it all, like a distant observer of a life that no longer included her. Neighbors who once waved or stopped to chat now passed by with polite nods, eyes averted, unaware of her quiet yearning for connection. Even family seemed to move in a parallel world, absorbed in their own routines, leaving her alone with her thoughts and fears. The emptiness of her home reflected the emptiness she felt in her heart, each corner a reminder of the people who had once filled it with presence and warmth. She tried to reach out, to phone, to write, to ask for company, but hesitation and the fear of being a burden held her back, reinforcing the isolation she felt. And in this quiet solitude, she began to whisper small prayers for comfort, for attention, for the assurance that she had not been entirely forgotten. Each day felt heavier than the last. Rising from bed, moving through the quiet house, even simple tasks seemed exhausting. Her spirit, long weighed down by loneliness, carried the fatigue of months spent alone. The walls around her felt like barriers, closing in, reminding her of the absence that defined her life. Even when she tried to occupy herself, the quiet pressed too heavily on her mind. She longed for conversation, for laughter, for someone to ask how she was. small signs of life that now seemed impossibly distant. Even memories of past joy could not fully warm her. They reminded her of what she no longer had. The contrast made her fatigue deeper, her heart heavier. Her spirit craved reassurance, simple words of acknowledgement that she was still present, still valued, still part of life. And yet, amidst the weariness, a faint hope flickered, fragile as candlelight, whispering that she was not entirely abandoned. Late at night, she pressed her hands together, lips moving softly in the darkness. "Please, Lord, be near me," she whispered. Her voice trembled, barely audible even to herself. The prayers were not elaborate, not grand. They were simple, quiet, desperate calls for comfort and presence. Tears formed as she poured her heart into words that seemed to float into the empty night. She asked for reassurance, for attention, for the faintest sign that she was not invisible. The silence of the house answered nothing, yet she persisted, murmuring each plea with fragile hope. Even in her weakness, she felt a subtle stirring, a gentle awareness that someone unseen was listening, though the room remained still. In that quiet surrender, she allowed herself to hope, a tiny seed of faith growing in the fertile soil of her loneliness. As the night wore on, doubt crept in like a slow shadow across her heart. "Am I forgotten?" she asked silently. "Does anyone even care about me anymore?" The questions pressed relentlessly, whispering fears she had tried to push away during the day. Her mind circled them endlessly, and her heart ached with uncertainty. She tried to recall moments of attention and love, but even those memories were faint, obscured by the long months of isolation. Each unanswered prayer, each silent night, seemed to confirm the doubts that gnawed quietly at her. Her chest felt tight, her breath shallow, as if the very weight of invisibility pressed upon her. And yet, in the depth of her questioning, she felt a faint awareness, a subtle, quiet presence, suggesting she was not entirely unseen. The emptiness around her became almost physical, pressing against her ears in the profound silence of the night. She longed for sound, a voice, a word, a simple acknowledgement of her presence. Her mind reached for familiar tones, a loved one calling her name, a friend laughing, even a passerby greeting her. The longing was deep, almost aching, like a muscle unused for too long. She whispered her name softly, half hoping it might echo back in response, half wishing for the miracle of connection. Each passing minute without sound reminded her of her solitude, her invisibility, and the absence of human warmth. Yet beneath the ache, a quiet hope stirred, tiny and fragile. Perhaps someone, perhaps even the Lord, was near, listening, and in that hope, she pressed her hands together once more, surrendering to a prayer of yearning that needed no audience but God. The weight of loneliness settled deep into her chest, a heaviness that made even lifting a cup or standing from her chair feel difficult. Her heart ached with sorrow, each beat echoing the emptiness around her. She moved slowly, every motion a reminder of her fragility, her isolation, and the burden of invisible grief she carried silently. Even breathing felt like a conscious effort, deliberate and laborious, as though the world itself conspired to slow her, to remind her of absence. She sat for long stretches, staring at walls, objects and shadows, letting the heaviness press down on her shoulders, acknowledging it, but not resisting fully. Her thoughts drifted to those who had once surrounded her with love, now absent, and sorrow pressed even harder against her spirit. And in the quiet of her heavy heart, she allowed herself to weep softly, mourning the distance, the solitude, and the deep desire for connection that remained unmet. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently, unbidden and unstoppable. Each drop carried the weight of months spent unseen and unheard. The room held her sorrow like a quiet witness, its shadows soft yet heavy, bearing the echo of her pain. She wept for the absence of warmth, for voices that had gone silent, for hands she would never hold again. Even the night seemed to join her grief, stretching endlessly around her, amplifying the depth of her solitude. Her sobs were whispered prayers, words that could not be spoken aloud, released only through tears that cleansed her heart in their own way. And in that quiet morning, a fragile hope lingered, a whisper that she might not always feel so alone. She pressed her hands together and let her voice barely rise above a whisper. "Lord, is there anyone for me?" The words trembled with vulnerability, carrying all the longing and ache that filled her heart. She did not ask for miracles or grand gestures, only for assurance that she was seen, heard, and remembered. The silence answered nothing, yet she continued to pray, letting the words flow even when hope felt faint. Her tears fell freely, each one a testament to her yearning, a quiet reaching toward a presence she could not yet perceive. And in that trembling surrender, a subtle awareness began to stir, an almost imperceptible sign that she was not entirely alone. It started as a sensation she could not name, a warmth that flowed into her chest, soft, subtle, and reassuring. Her breath caught. Could she have imagined it? She held still, waiting, afraid to hope. The warmth persisted, steady and gentle, as if someone unseen was near, offering silent comfort. The heaviness in her heart lifted slightly, the tension in her shoulders eased, and a quiet calm replaced the sharp ache of loneliness. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to lean into the sensation, letting it soothe the deepest corners of her spirit. For the first time in months, she felt presence, quiet, unwavering, and wholly attentive. The warmth became deeper, spreading through her entire being, as if an invisible hand rested on her heart. There were no words, no gestures, only a sense of unwavering attention that seemed to say, "You are not forgotten, you are loved." Her mind, once crowded with doubt, found stillness. Anxiety softened, replaced by the tender assurance of care. Even the memories of isolation, which had pressed so heavily on her, now felt held, acknowledged, but no longer defining her. Her tears were now lighter, not just sorrow, but release, mingled with the comfort of being fully seen. In that quiet reassurance, she felt the truth of her worth, deeply and permanently, as if it had always been there, waiting to be recognized. The fear that had haunted her nights began to loosen, softening gradually as she remained still in the quiet warmth surrounding her. Her breathing became steady, each inhale carrying the calm that had seemed impossible, each exhale releasing months of tension. The shadows in the room no longer pressed upon her. They seemed softened, held at bay by the gentle presence that embraced her heart. She felt secure, protected, valued not by human eyes, but by a love that did not falter, a presence that did not leave. The ache of doubt and loneliness remained, but now it was tempered, manageable, a soft echo rather than a relentless weight. And in that stillness she felt the beginnings of trust, fragile yet profound. She was fully seen, wholly loved, and never truly alone. It was not a touch she could see, but one she felt in every corner of her being. A quiet, invisible embrace wrapped around her, steady and unwavering. Her chest, long heavy with loneliness, felt lighter. Her shoulders, once tense and burdened, relaxed subtly under the gentle presence. She allowed herself to sink into this comfort, letting it flow through her heart and mind, softening the edges of fear and despair. Even the deepest ache of isolation seemed to soften, replaced by a warmth she could not name, but recognized as love. Tears fell, not of sorrow but of release, carrying away months of unspoken grief. In this gentle touch, she felt something profound. She was fully acknowledged, fully cherished, and deeply held. Memories of small acts of kindness, years of care and love, freely given, surfaced in her mind. Each moment reflected a life that had meaning and depth. Her hands, once trembling with doubt, now seemed capable again, vessels of care and strength, reminders of the life she had lived fully. She remembered the smiles she had received, the gratitude quietly expressed, the unseen ways she had touched lives. Her heart, once heavy with feelings of being a burden, now felt lighter, reminded that every act of love mattered, even if unnoticed by others. She realized that her worth was intrinsic, not dependent on visits, calls, or acknowledgement. She had value simply by being herself. And in this quiet rediscovery, a deep sense of peace began to bloom, soft and enduring. Her breathing deepened, slower, more even. The weight that had pressed upon her chest gradually lifted, replaced by a serene calm. Even the ache of solitude, so persistent in the past, now felt gentler, manageable, softened by the steady presence she sensed. Her mind, once crowded with anxious thoughts, cleared. Each moment became lighter, more spacious, filled with an awareness of safety and love. The shadows of the room seemed less oppressive, almost tender, as if echoing the calm that had settled in her heart. She sat quietly, savoring the sensation of ease, letting it permeate every corner of her being. And in that inner peace, she felt herself fully present, fully alive and fully known. The first smile came quietly, small and hesitant, but genuine. She had forgotten the sweetness of simple joy, and now it returned like sunlight breaking through clouds. She noticed the morning light streaming through the window, the gentle sway of the trees, the faint chirping of birds outside. Her heart lifted at the small delights she had overlooked, subtle reminders of life's beauty that had always existed. Even a sip of tea, the warmth of a blanket, the softness of her own hands felt comforting and joyful. She laughed softly, fragile at first, then with more ease, letting the sound fill the quiet room with life once more. And in this gentle awakening of delight, she realized joy could coexist with grief, and life could be tender and full again. She awoke with a sense of renewal, the morning light feeling warmer, gentler, infused with possibility. The heaviness she had carried seemed to have shifted, leaving space for clarity, hope, and quiet anticipation. Her body moved with ease she hadn't felt in months, each motion a subtle celebration of life restored. She thought of small acts she could do today, ways to engage with the world, moments to nurture herself and others. The day felt different, brighter, not because the world had changed, but because she had changed within it. And in that awakening, she felt a sense of purpose return, soft yet unwavering, ready to guide her steps. Tears had dried, but her heart carried a warmth that lingered, gentle and constant. She was no longer haunted by doubt or the fear of being forgotten. She recognized a profound truth. She was cherished, not by the world alone, but by the presence that had never left her side. Every small act of kindness, every word of love she had given or received, echoed in her soul, affirming her value beyond measure. Even in moments of silence and solitude, she felt accompanied, heard, and wholly known. Her spirit was light, her heart steady, and her soul embraced the unshakable awareness of eternal love. And as she moved through the day, she carried with her this quiet certainty. She was never truly alone, she was fully seen, and she was endlessly loved.